You know, there is this feeling that I think so many of us get where life just feels like, well, an endless, exhausting treadmill.
Oh, absolutely. It's so common.
Like you wake up, you answer the emails, you put out whatever fires are happening, you go to sleep, and then the very next day, you just have to do it all over again.
Right.
Why? Because, absolutely nothing is actually permanently finished.
Yeah, I mean, it is essentially the defining characteristic of modern burnout. You
Yeah.
find yourself caught in this relentless cycle of striving.
Just burning energy.
Exactly. Expending a massive amount of energy just to maintain a baseline. You never truly get to clock out and, just rest.
And usually we think of that as a strictly modern 21st century corporate world problem.
Sure, yeah.
But today we are taking a deep dive into a fascinating stack of sources. We've got theological commentaries, historical analyses, and specifically chapters 8 through 10 of the ancient book of Hebrews.
A really rich section of text.
It is, and it turns out these ancient texts perfectly diagnose that exact same human exhaustion. They just apply it to the realm of spirituality and religion.
Right.
So welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is to explore a monumental shift that these sources describe. We are looking at the transition from the repetitive shadows of ancient religious rituals to what the text calls the substance of a finished reality.
Which is such a massive paradigm shift.
Huge. And the goal is to help you understand how this author conceptualizes moving the human experience from that endless, exhausting religious striving to, well, total, permanent internal rest.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really grasp the solution being offered here, we first have to understand the historical setting, right? Like, where did this ancient worship actually take place?
Well, that setting is the earthly tabernacle.
Right.
And to really understand the exhaustion we're talking about, you have to put yourself in the shoes of a first-century person looking back at this structure.
Okay, paint a picture for us.
So the Jewish tabernacle was this meticulously constructed, portable sanctuary, originally designed by Moses.
Huh.
And, I mean, it was designed down to the exact millimeter.
Right, based on a really specific pattern he was given.
Exactly.
And it wasn't just a basic tent, from what I was reading. Like, it was elaborate.
Oh, far from it. It was an
Yeah.
absolute sensory masterpiece.
Yeah.
You had these incredibly heavy, gorgeously embroidered curtains.
Woven with, like, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn.
Yes, all these rich colors. You had golden artifacts catching the light, the smell of burning incense constantly in the air, the massive bronze altar. I mean, it was designed to inspire awe.
Wow.
And this is the central argument the author of Hebrews makes. This earthly structure,
Yeah.
as spectacular as it was fundamentally incomplete.
Incomplete.
Yeah. The text claims it was merely a copy or a shadow of the true heavenly sanctuary.
Okay, I have to pause you there because that raises an obvious question.
Yeah.
If Moses was given these exact blueprints by God, why build a shadow? Like, why wouldn't God just give them the actual finished reality right from the start instead of, a prototype?
That is the exact tension the text is playing with. And what's fascinating here is that the language in the original Greek is so helpful.
How so?
Well, the word translated as true, when it talks about the true tabernacle in heaven, it actually means real or substance.
Oh, okay.
It's not saying the earthly tent was false or a lie or a mistake. It's saying it was the two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional reality.
I see.
The earthly tabernacle was necessary for a specific time to kind of point the people toward a reality they weren't yet ready to fully access.
It's a bit like having a photograph, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Like, if you have a photograph of someone you deeply love and they're living on the other side of the world, you treasure that photo. You frame it, you put it on your desk, you might even talk to it.
Right, it serves a beautiful purpose.
But imagine the day that person finally comes home and walks through your front door. You wouldn't ignore the living, breathing human being, stare down at your desk and say, "No thanks, I prefer the photograph."
No, that would
Well,
be completely absurd.
right.
The photograph did its job. It kept your focus on the person. But it was never meant to be the final destination.
And that is the challenge this ancient text is putting in front of you today. It's asking you to consider where you might be settling for the copy.
Yeah, the comfortable religious routine.
Exactly. The external building, the checklist of behaviors, when an actual living reality is supposedly standing right in front of you.
The author is arguing that Jesus, ministering in a heavenly sanctuary, is the actual reality. He is the substance casting the shadow backward into history.
Okay, so if we've established this shift in location from an earthly tent to a heavenly reality, How did ancient people actually secure their standing with God inside that system?
That's a huge question.
What were the rules of engagement? Because the sources highlight a massive difference in how this agreement is structured. They draw a hard line between a contract and a covenant.
Yeah, and this is where we run headfirst into basic human nature. Human beings naturally gravitate toward contracts.
We really do.
A contract is a negotiated bargain between two parties.
Hmm.
It is inherently transactional. If I do this, you will do that.
Right.
You see this constantly in ancient texts, even early in the biblical narrative with figures like Jacob.
Hmm.
When Jacob is fleeing his home, he basically tries to broker a deal with God.
He negotiates.
Literally, he says, if you watch over me, and if you give me food and clothes, and if you bring me safely back home, then you will be my God.
Yeah.
He's trying to dictate the terms for a bargaining table.
Which, if we are being honest, is exactly how most of us operate today.
Oh, 100%.
We want to negotiate. Like, look, if I am a good person, if I give to charity, if I don't cheat on my taxes, then the universe or God owes me health and a relatively easy life.
We want a predictable transaction.
Exactly. But these sources insist that the relationship described in Hebrews does not operate on a contract. It operates on a unilateral covenant.
Right.
But wait, unilateral sounds incredibly dictatorial. If there's no negotiation, how is that different from a tyrant just handing down a list of arbitrary demands?
That is a great pushback. And it would be dictatorial if the party setting the terms didn't have humanity's ultimate good in mind.
Okay, fair point.
In a biblical covenant, God sets the terms entirely on his own, yes. There is no bargaining table. He says these are the parameters of the relationship, and humanity simply has the choice to say yes or no.
Right.
But the difference between a tyrant and this covenant is the motivation behind it.
I think the difference between a business arrangement and a marriage makes this really clear.
Oh, definitely.
Think about it. A business contract is a legal document you sign with a vendor. It's entirely about terms, conditions, and protecting your assets.
Very safe and calculated.
Right. If the vendor fails to deliver the goods, you take them to court, and the contract is voided. But a covenant is the vow made at a wedding altar.
Yeah.
When you say, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, you aren't negotiating a conditional off-ramp. It is rooted in steadfast loyalty.
Beautifully said.
When someone proposes, they don't slide a spreadsheet of negotiated chores across a table. They offer a unilateral choice. Will you bind your life to mine, yes or no?
Exactly. And according to the historical context here, under the Old Covenant, the terms that were set down things like the Ten Commandments, they were actually perfect.
Right.
They were the ideal parameters for human flourishing. The problem wasn't the rules. The problem was that the people completely and utterly failed to keep them.
So if God knew they were going to fail, why set up that specific covenant in the first place? Like, why give them a system they couldn't survive?
The sources suggest it functioned essentially as a diagnostic tool. Think of it like an MRI. An MRI is a brilliant piece of machinery. It can look inside your body and show you exactly where a bone is broken or where a disease is hiding. It reveals the absolute truth about your condition.
Right, but an MRI cannot fix the broken bone.
Exactly. The Old Covenant law was the MRI. It proved to humanity that they were morally sick and incapable of perfect obedience. It diagnosed the illness perfectly, but it wasn't the cure.
So what does this all mean for the treatment plan, so to speak?
Well,
Because if the law proves that the terms of the relationship are broken, how does the ancient world handle that failure? I have to admit, reading through the research, the mechanism they used, animal sacrifice, feels incredibly barbaric to a modern reader.
it really does.
It's just a relentless bloody treadmill. Why couldn't they just say, I'm sorry, and move on?
That is exactly how a 21st century mind reacts. But in the ancient Near East, sin, the breaking of a divine covenant, was considered infinitely expensive.
It wasn't just a mistake.
No, it wasn't just a social faux pas, it was an act of cosmic treason. You couldn't pay for it with an apology. The ancient worldview believed that the cost of violating the source of life was life itself. So, in the earthly tabernacle, this cost was paid through a relentless system of substitutions. Bulls, goats, sheep.
It was, as the texts describe, a deeply visceral, bloody business.
Very bloody.
You really have to imagine the sensory reality of it. It wasn't a pristine, quiet church service. It was loud with the sounds of animals. It smelled like burning fat and copper.
Yeah, it was overwhelming.
It was designed to be a highly visual, shocking demonstration that human guilt carries a massive, fatal consequence. And there is a specific detail about this daily operation that absolutely floored me.
What's that?
In that earthly tabernacle, they had all this beautifully crafted furniture, the golden lampstand, the table of showbread, the altar of incense. But if you look at the blueprints, there were no chairs. Not a single one.
None. And the author of Hebrews points this out specifically. The earthly priests stood daily at their service. They never sat down.
Because their work was never, ever finished.
Right.
Day after day, year after year, generation after generation, they are dragging animals to this altar, offering the exact same sacrifices over and over again.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
So you have to ask, what does this actually achieve? If you think about it logically, the sheer repetition proves the system is broken.
Yeah.
If you go to your doctor and they prescribe a medication, and you have to keep going back to the clinic for that exact same bottle of pills every single week for the rest of your life.
It proves one devastating thing.
Exactly. You aren't actually cured. The medicine isn't eradicating the disease, it is merely managing your symptoms.
That is a phenomenal way to look at it.
Yeah.
And the text makes this exact philosophical argument. The author points out that if those ancient animal sacrifices had actually worked to permanently remove human guilt, the worshippers would have stopped offering them.
Because their consciences would have been clear.
Right, but they didn't stop. And the fundamental limitation, according to the sources, was the nature of the sacrifice itself.
Right, because an animal doesn't have moral agency.
Precisely. Animal blood possesses innocence. A sheep hasn't done anything wrong, but it does not possess a moral conscience.
It didn't choose to be obedient.
Exactly. It was simply dragged to an altar. So this ancient worldview held that the blood of an innocent animal could provide outward ceremonial cleansing for the community. It could keep the society functioning.
But it couldn't go deeper?
No. It could never reach deep down and cleanse a human conscience. It couldn't remove the psychological and spiritual weight of willful human rebellion.
So instead of being a cure, those daily sacrifices became what the text calls an annual reminder of sin.
Just a constant reminder.
Every time you saw the smoke rising from the altar, it was just a giant flashing neon sign reminding everyone that they were still sick. It covered the problem up temporarily, but it didn't solve it.
Right.
Which brings us to the ultimate turning point of this deep dive. This exhausting, endless cycle of standing priests and temporary fixes sets the perfect stage for the arrival of the substance.
And this is where the text claims the monumental shift occurs. Jesus enters the narrative. But according to Hebrews, he doesn't enter the earthly tent made by human hands.
He bypasses the shadow.
Yes, he bypasses the shadow and enters the true heavenly sanctuary. And he brings a fundamentally better sacrifice.
He doesn't bring the blood of an unwilling, unthinking animal.
No. The text posits that he brings himself. It is the rational, voluntary, perfect obedience of the Son of God.
Wow.
He isn't dragged to an altar. He willingly lays his life down. And because of the infinite value of that specific life, he enters the most holy place once for all time.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The posture here is what truly captures my imagination.
But passes everything.
We just talked about how the earthly priests were constantly on their feet because their job was an endless treadmill. But when Jesus offered this one sacrifice, what does the text emphasize that he did?
He sat down.
He sat down. He sat down at the right hand of God. Think about being at a massive, busy dinner party. The people who are standing up, rushing back and forth to the kitchen, carrying plates, wiping down counters, those are the people who are still working.
Right.
The people who are sitting down at the table, leaning back in their chairs, their work is completely finished.
The visual contrast is stunning. And if we connect this to the bigger picture by sitting down, the author is arguing that Jesus is universally declaring, "It is finished."
Done.
The endless treadmill of religious striving, of trying to balance the cosmic scales with your own effort, is over. And unlike the animal sacrifices that just manage the symptoms, this sacrifice claims to actually cure the disease.
It makes me think of trying to maintain a garden. The old system, the daily sacrifices, was like dealing with weeds by just taking a rake and churning them into the topsoil.
Okay, yeah.
You're covering them up with dirt, and maybe it looks clean for a minute, but the root systems are still entirely intact underneath. In fact, by chopping them up, you've probably just helped them multiply.
You haven't fixed the garden at all.
Right. The claim Hebrews makes about Jesus is that he didn't just cover the weeds with fresh dirt. He reached down into the soil of humanity and pulled the root of sin entirely out of the ground.
And if we follow the logic of the text, because that ultimate sacrifice was completely successful and because this high priest is now confidently seated, the implications for the individual are staggering.
How so?
Well, you are invited into a radically new reality where the rules of engagement are entirely transformed.
Oh, we move from the old covenant to the new covenant.
Exactly.
And for anyone exhausted by the treadmill, this is where the profound relief comes in. The new covenant is no longer about a heavy list of external rules carved into stone tablets, rules that you carry around, constantly measure yourself against, and, inevitably fail to keep.
Right.
God makes a completely new promise. He says, I will put my laws in their minds and write them on their hearts.
The entire locus of control moves from external regulation to internal transformation. And perhaps even more radically, the text states that God promises total, absolute forgiveness, utilizing a fascinating phrasing. He says, I will remember their sins no more.
That is wild.
The sources highlight this as God utilizing his divine prerogative to deliberately, intentionally forget the sins of those in this covenant.
That concept of an omniscient God choosing deliberate amnesia is just wild to think about. But going back to that internal transformation, some people might hear the rules are no longer written on stone and think, great, the rules don't matter anymore. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, that's a common misconception.
But that's not what the text is saying, is it?
Not at all. The moral standard hasn't been lowered or abolished. What changes the human motivation for pursuing that standard?
I think about how this works with teenagers.
Oh boy.
If you have a teenage son, you can print out a massive neon poster that says, wear a clean shirt and tack it right above his bed. And for years, that boy will completely ignore the poster. He'll grab the shirt off the floor that he wore yesterday.
It's so true.
The rule is on the outside, tacked to a wall, and it has absolutely zero power to actually change his behavior. But think about what happens the moment that teenager falls in love with someone at school.
Everything changes.
Suddenly, without anyone nagging him, without pointing to the poster, he is doing laundry. He wants to wear a clean shirt every single day.
That perfectly illustrates the shift. The standard of cleanliness didn't change. The poster is still technically correct. But the motivation moved from a place of external obligation to a place of internal desire.
He is obeying out of a new relationship, out of affection, rather than out of fear of breaking a rule.
Right.
That is the claim of what the new covenant does to a human being. It doesn't throw away the moral standard. It supposedly changes your heart so that you actually desire to live it out. You aren't forcing yourself to be good to earn a contract. You are naturally responding to a covenant of love.
And this raises an important question, which brings this entire ancient analysis right to your doorstep, listening today. The sources challenge the reader to evaluate their own operating system. Are you still living a religion, or even just a secular life, of external performance?
Just checking boxes.
Exactly. Are you secretly trying to bargain with the universe, offering up your exhausted good deeds like a legal contract, hoping to earn favor or peace? Or have you allowed this inside-out transformation to take place? Are you actually resting in the claim that the ultimate work is already finished?
It is a profound shift in perspective. To recap the journey these sources have taken us on today, we have explored the claim of moving from the shadow of an earthly tent to the reality of a heavenly sanctuary.
Right.
We've contrasted a transactional negotiated contract with a loving unilateral covenant. We've seen how external rules designed to diagnose our failure give way to internal desires written on the heart.
Yeah.
And most importantly, we have looked at the shift from earthly priests who stood daily in absolute exhaustion, endlessly managing the symptoms of guilt, to a high priest who offered himself once and then sat down in total victory.
It's an amazing summary. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final striking image from the original text to really anchor this concept of rest.
I'd love to hear it.
In the original Greek language, when the author of Hebrews is urgently pleading with believers to persevere and to hold on to this new reality, he actually uses a very specific nautical term.
Oh, interesting.
The phrase that often gets translated into English as shrinking back literally means lowering or reefing your sails.
Whoa, wow. That changes the imagery completely.
It does. The author is painting a picture of a ship that has been caught in a brutal storm. And the message to them and to you is this: the voyage is almost over. Your anchor is already secured safely within the true heavenly sanctuary.
Right.
Knowing that your high priest has already done the heavy lifting,
Yeah.
knowing that the text claims he has defeated the storm and is seated in victory, why on earth would you lower your sails now?
That is such a powerful metaphor. Don't pull back.
Yeah.
Don't return to the exhausting, standing treadmill of trying to earn what the covenant says has already been freely given. Let the reality of that finished work propel you through whatever storm you are currently facing. Because if the text is right, you don't have to stand and strive anymore. You are allowed to sit down.
And, looking at how perfectly this ancient text diagnoses our modern exhaustion, it leaves you with a really fascinating question to ponder.
What's that?
If the work truly is finished, and we are fundamentally allowed to step off the treadmill and sit down, how much of our daily modern anxiety is actually just muscle memory?
Oh, wow.
Like how much of our stress is just our minds and bodies reacting to a treadmill that we don't even realize we've already stepped off of? It's something to think about the next time you find yourself frantically checking your emails at 11 p.m. trying to earn your peace.
Muscle memory from a treadmill we aren't even on anymore. That is going to stick with me. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope exploring these ancient texts brought you some clarity and perhaps a little bit of rest. We will catch you on the next one. Take care.